Okay, so in this video we're going to look at two different ways of finding a relative minimum on a graphing calculator. The first is algebraically. If I press math, notice here that the sixth option says fmin for minimum. So I click 6 and now I have that. If our function is x minus x to the third, I enter that first. So enter in x minus x to the third. Press the right button to get out of the exponents there. Press a comma button. And now I enter in x, telling the calculator that my variable in this expression is x, and then I enter in my interval. So I'm going to go from -1 to 1, right? That's saying the x interval is from -1 to 1, and we're finding what is the x value when y is at its lowest in that interval. So what is the x value when y is at its lowest? Close parentheses and hit enter, and it gives me a calculation. Which is it's a very precise calculation here, and it has a very small margin of error, a 1/100,000th. It'll be 1/100,000th off, whether you're graphing or doing this algebraically, so very close. And we can confirm that this makes sense by doing the same process graphically. If I enter my equation editor up here, my y equals button, to enter my function. Enter the same function, x minus x to the third, right? Hit enter, we've got this function, right? Now I want to graph it. And here you can see that the way this function looks, it really matters where you set up your interval, and that will define what the relative minimum is within that interval. So here, to do the same thing, we can set up second and trace. That leads us to this calculate menu right here. I select choice 3, which is for minimum values. It wants to know what the left bound of our interval will be, so I enter in -1. That's my left bound, and then we go up to 1, just like we did before for the right bound. Notice here it shows you what the interval is going to be, where it is relatively on this graph, and when it says guess, it's asking you to pick a point within that interval. I try to pick a point that I think is close to the relative minimum. So I keep scrolling to the right until I reach that point. Okay, that's pretty good. Hit enter. And notice here the minimum, it's very close to our other value, right? -0.577349. Quit that. And you can see it's a little bit off, of course, depending on the margin of error, but also very close. So that's two ways of finding relative minimum. Thanks.